listening to the Construction Big Breakfast, where we give you a hearty serving of insider tips and business strategies to help fuel your day so you can thrive in the construction industry. Now, here's your host, Tip Top Tim Fitch.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the Construction Big Breakfast with me, your host, Tip Top Tim Fitch. And in this episode, I'm joined by our very special guest, Paul Hemming.
Hello, nice to be here. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Now, Paul's a very interesting chap that I bumped into virtually a few weeks ago, and I'm sure is going to be of great interest to our listeners and viewers.
Hopefully.
So, Paul, just before we get into the meat and potatoes, and for our vegan listeners, that would be potatoes. I've got to ask you, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Well, Tim, knowing that I was coming on the Construction Big Breakfast, I thought I had to do something significant and out of the ordinary. So, I mean, obviously the last few weeks, months, almost years, it feels like, where we've all been in lockdown, it's got a bit monotonous with breakfast. But this morning I thought I was going to treat myself and do what I used to do when I go to a building site. And I had a sausage and egg bap, and I was delighted by it, to be honest.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Now, there is another question, an obvious follow-up to that. Now, this is what segments the entire world.
Yeah.
Are you a red or a brown man?
I think I'm probably with the majority and say I'm a red sauce man.
Okay. So,
what about you?
Well, interestingly, I'm most. If you were to ask me if I was having a fry-up, what was I? It's definitely brown.
Same here. I would follow you on that.
I'm most, generally speaking, I'm brown with baps as well.
Really?
But there's a place I go in Russell Square. There's an old one of those cabbie shacks, the green ones you see in London. Yeah. There's an old lady in there who runs it, and occasionally I buy a roll on the way into the office there. And of course, what you get is a nice crusty roll, but lovely soggy reheated bacon that's come straight out of the wave. And she uses the cheapest margarine you can imagine, and that vinegary cheap brown sauce.
Fantastic. It sounds great.
That's
what we miss.
Is just fantastic because it's oozing with presumably trans fatty acids and God knows what. And it's just fantastic. And so in those situations, I'm definitely brown with that. But sometimes I do drift into the red side.
Really? And so tell me, what do you? Another thing that defines individuals, I guess, is what do you I call it a bap because I'm from the Midlands, but what do you call a roll? Do you call it a roll?
Oh, well, you see, although I'm obviously from the south, I have this debate about roll. I'll probably say roll, but barm cake. That's another one. I've spent enough time in the north. And of course, the other big debate, and I can remember when I first went to university and met all my friends in the north for the first time. I can remember we used to have these strident debates about things exactly like that. And the one which got really heated was whether it's scone or scone. And I was very, very strident.
About scone, because you're from the south?
I can't remember which side of the debate I was on.
But you were fierce about it at the time.
I remember having these horrendous, stupid rows with the students. And funny enough, I'm not even sure now what I'd say, although there is one in the fridge because the reason we're going to, Alison bought me one. My wife bought me one yesterday. Okay. Filled scone or scone. I think I say scone.
Yeah, I would say scone, but my mum would be disappointed in me if she heard me.
So
again.
I actually had peanut butter on toast this morning. I've been a bit under the weather. I had my COVID jab on Saturday, and we're talking on Tuesday. And I had it obviously worked because I felt like I was going down with something Sunday.
Okay.
Again a bit yesterday. I'm mostly over it now, but didn't feel up to having the full fry.
Is that your comfort food? Is it, or peanut butter on toast, or?
I've found during lockdown I've had to eat less. I haven't wanted to eat as much because I haven't been going to the gym. I'm a big sort of weights person, so without doing that, although I maintain the cardio with the walking and a bit of mountain biking, I haven't been able to burn calories in the gym, and that's I've been lucky at this time of life. It just cuts my appetite, so I eat less now than I ever used to. So okay. My typical weekday breakfast now is either toast with something like peanut butter or 2 boiled eggs, again with some toast. I do have a cooked breakfast every now and then at the weekend.
I don't have them enough, I'm afraid. Very sadly, I don't have a cooked breakfast enough. My girlfriend is Italian, and cooked English breakfast, as tempting as they are for me, they don't seem to tempt her as much, sadly.
Well, you know, it's cultural. Well, yeah, there's a bit of cultural experimentation required, I think.
Yeah, but we've been together for 6 years, and she's not so interested in English breakfast anymore. She tried it.
Well, obviously, the podcast is supposed to be about breakfast, but
maybe we should slow down on the breakfast chat.
We did have some other ambitions when we set this up, because, of course, Paul, you have started and running successfully a very interesting business. So perhaps for the benefit of everyone else who hasn't met you before, just give me a quick 30 seconds on you and C-Link.
Okay, so C-Link is we're a software company, a construction software company, so we're in Contech. I'm actually, by experience and qualification, a quantity surveyor, sadly some might say, but that's what I did in my career, as is the other co-founder, Chris. And 5 years ago we set up C-Link with the vision really of trying to make the process of doing construction procurement as simple as possible, automating lots of the process, but also giving you the user an access to a marketplace of like pre-qualified subcontractors, so that they're always competitively tendering. So yeah, we've been going for 5 years now. I think it's growing nicely, which is nice.
But that's impressive, and really pleased to hear that it's going well. But the thing that's extra exciting about it is that here's a product or a system which is competing with the traditional way of doing things, which I see 2 ways now, because there's the stuff that's like the public procurement, which is, you know, although I was a Remainer, was to a certain degree ruined by all the EU regulations. Mm-hmm. And I guess where you're aiming for at the moment, which is the private sector, is that have I got that?
Yeah, generally found a little bit of a niche with the private sector, largely in the residential and commercial project sphere.
And just, I think I know, but for our listeners, what is it you're competing against? What is the alternative to your product that's there at the moment?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, if I go back to 2015, 2016, when I set up the business, and I'd love to say it was my fantastic idea. It was actually Chris, my business partner's idea. We were sat in the pub. I actually worked on major projects. I was always a subcontractor, but I worked on Battersea Power Station, the Walkie-Talkie, the Shard, projects like that. Chris was working in smaller residential projects as a main contractor, and we were sat in the pub one night, and he was saying, "Why is it so difficult? I'm having all these problems with procurement, whereby everything was very paper-based, lots of Excel spreadsheets, didn't always have access to this big network of contractors." So he felt like he wasn't getting value for money a lot of the time, despite trying to do the best job that he could and being a really good QS. The tools weren't there for him to do the best job, get the best value for the company he was working for. And funnily enough, even though I was on a completely different side of the sector, if you like, I was on major works and I was actually a subcontractor, and I was doing subcontracting. I had exactly the same problem. So going back to 2015, 2016, 2017, we were probably competing largely against Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, less developed tools. And I would say that at the moment, systems and software are developing generally across construction, but less so around what we're very much trying to focus on, automating and replicating the expertise of a quantity surveyor. I don't think there's too many tools that are doing that specifically in that little niche. I know that might sound very niche, but that's exactly what we're going for. We're trying to be the tool for quantity surveyors. And still, although we've been going now we're in our 6th year, and although things have really changed in the industry, and from where we were at the very beginning, it seemed like there was hardly any tools. There now is more and more tools and more adoption, if you like, by the industry. McKinsey did a report recently of the 22 sectors, primary sectors of industry in the world. And sadly for us as an industry in construction, you'll probably know where we landed. We landed right at the bottom in terms of innovation and technology uptake. So we ranked 21 out of 22 for sector to have taken up and made benefit of technology. So although we are competing with more and more software tools and still competing against the status quo, if you like, of Microsoft Word, Excel, those kind of tools, the industry is still very much, in my opinion anyway, in early adopter phase. We still haven't got mass adoption. Loads of SMEs still out there not really using lots of tools available. But that's the exciting part, I guess. That's the frustration if you're in construction, because we aren't moving fast enough. But also as an entrepreneur, or if you like, from my point of view, that kind of whets my appetite a bit about the opportunity to really have a lasting impact on the way we work.
Well, you've taken the words out of my mouth, because when everyone starts trying to beat construction up for their own purposes. Obviously, I'm sure you've read the final report. And the
which report, Tim? Sorry, I lost you there.
Farmer report, Mark Farmer's report from a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What people don't realise is when you say that it's at the bottom of the league or one off from the bottom, if you've got any sort of entrepreneurial ability or even ambition, it's like a massive green light going off, isn't it? Because there's the opportunity, because it's a slow adoption industry of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of structural reasons why, which your product might help to actually break down. It's just a wonderful opportunity, isn't it? And of course,
it is. Yeah, I mean, you can look at it both sides, can't you? There's so much opportunity for change, but then there's also frustration by the lack of acceleration. But I do think we are changing in the industry, and there is more and more investment into Contech. But I think that there is so much opportunity for us to change as a sector, and it's everyone is it's really tough working on building sites, whether you're the developer, whether you're the main contractor, whether you're the subcontractor, whoever you are. No one is. I think everyone is generally coming away from a day of work thinking that was a challenge, and there was loads of things that came up. So anything that can be done to improve it is a win. And the government is desperate for us to improve, aren't they? They do a new report every 5 years, don't they, saying how much we need to improve and how.
Of course, you've just had the construction playbook.
I saw that, yeah.
Which was, I suppose, the theme of it was how public procurement's going to change the focus more on value.
Mm.
Well, I'm not a cynic, because I was involved. It wasn't the first one of these reports. In fact, it wasn't even the second, although everyone thinks it was the second. But I was involved in the original Egan movement for innovation.
Really? I learned all about that at university, Tim. It was fascinating. So thank you for that.
Whilst you were at university, I was actually, and I ran one of the first demonstration projects back in about '99. And anyway, it was so prominent, I got invited to this dinner at the Institution of Civil Engineers in the president's dining room, and Sir John Egan was the guest of honour.
Lovely stuff.
And of course, you had all the great and the good, all the CEOs of the big companies then, including Sir John Armitt, who I think at the time was at Costain, I think. But there were all the other faces from my youth were there. And of course, in my little demonstration project, looking back on it with all those years of hindsight, it had not only had it demonstrated genuine invention and innovate. There's lots of innovation around collaboration or alliancing and creating massive cost advantages for the client, but also a great high profit business for the company I was currently employed by.
Yeah.
And of course, were those lessons really learned? Because the business I worked for at the time never capitalised on it. I moved on a couple of years later, and I'm not sure that the industry learned from it particularly either.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always used to think that one of the main problems with, and I was always a subcontractor, so I always worked with multiple clients, if you like. I was working on maybe 3 or 4 projects at any time. I always found that it was a frustration that often you would, over the course of 6 months or a year or however long you're working on any project, you would potentially build good bonds with people, maybe not with everyone, but you'd form these project teams. Whether you got on or didn't get on, you gained a load of knowledge together, and then sure enough, project finished, you all disbanded and never saw each other again. If you did see each other again, it wasn't in the same format. So all the lessons that you had learned collectively, because you are a project team, whether you like it or not, all of that information and all that knowledge source and camaraderie, if you like, just dissipates at the end of every single project. Gone. And I think that is one of the main problems that we have as a sector as well, in terms of generally just improving and being better.
Well, we're getting on to the philosophy now, aren't we? Because of course, construction by definition is a project orientated business industry, and there's PhDs and goodness knows what written about how you should manage these sorts of businesses better. But I would take slight issue with what you said, because you're right. Projects are delivered by teams. They create knowledge as part of the solution. And of course, I think people think, well, that knowledge should be collected, and what does that look like? Oh, it's a report or a lessons learned report and all of that stuff. And relationships are formed. So I've done a lot of work on the relationship part of it. But I'm not so sure that it is absolutely forgotten. It's just not in the same form as it was before, because those relationships, you take the camaraderie, the close relationships that get formed delivering a project, and they are, from a business to business point of view, that's when the real intimacy,
that's when the magic happens.
It is, and it's also, if you look at 2 businesses coming together to deliver a project, it's always more than 2, but just say 2. Any business of scale, what actually happens on a project is you get multiple points of contact and relationship forming. So rather than in the old-fashioned way, you think about business to business, where you have the salesperson and the buyer.
Yes.
Dyadic relationship. It's very brittle, isn't it? Either one of them leaves or retires, it's gone. So within a project, you get multiple relationships forming. The project manager have multiple on the other side, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's a much more robust relationship, and by the nature of having gone through a joint experience, which will have had plenty of bumps in the road, if it was any project worth its while, it won't have gone completely smoothly.
Yeah.
People won't ever forget that. The concept.
No, yeah, I don't disagree with that. I guess, I mean, I guess my point of view was more like you may personally shoulder the experience and shoulder the improvement from it, but you then go to another project, and perhaps this is more my subcontractor mindset coming out, where I had loads of different clients as opposed to being on a job for 3 years and then using a similar supply chain perhaps. But you would personally develop and improve project on project, of course, but taking those relationships and actually building as a collective entity in the project-based sector that construction is was always a bit of a challenge, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that in itself is a fact. We could run a master's degree on that.
I could. You probably could. You're much more intelligent than I am.
Thanks. Maybe I am. Who knows? But it's not really what I think so interesting about what you're doing is that you've created something which I guess doesn't. What does it actually, in your view, do? Does it smooth the communication between the client and the subcontractors? Does it help manage the risk? What's the benefit over the old way of doing it?
Both of those things that you mentioned. I mean, I hate to see waste, and I think that's what Chris and I were talking about in the pub when we decided to start Sealing. Was I'm trying to do my best here, but the tools aren't coming together, and I'm just wasting money. And I think what it gives you is it removes all of the waste, or a lot of the waste, perhaps not all of it. So it means that the system is sophisticated enough to actually do what a quantity surveyor would do in a couple of days, in a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes. So it will read the drawings and break everything out for you as a project, which saves you a lot of time, which means that rather than spending all your time getting to the point of competitive tendering, getting to the point of value engineering, what we're trying to do is remove all the waste, remove all the time spent, get you to that point straight away, connect you with hand-picked supply chain of contractors for all trades. So it's not just the yellow pages, it's connecting you with intelligent, considered subcontractors who are going to tender and who are encouraged to value engineer. So it's removing the waste in terms of getting things done and getting you to the point of having tenders on your table, but it's also making the supply chain really focused on, let's build this project intelligently. So we'll tender intelligently, we'll offer you value engineering, and the idea is that every Sealing project is built in a sophisticated, intelligent way, as opposed to just in a reactive way, which on many projects that I worked on in the past, not because the people on it weren't good professionals, but because of the circumstance, i.e. tight budget, tight program, poor systems in place, poor decisions were made. And we did a survey at the start of Sealing, which asked quantity surveyors, project managers, asked all these professionals about whether or not they had ever made a procurement decision under pressure which they regretted. And over 80% of them said yes. The other 20%, I'm pretty sure, were all fibbing, because they must have done. So, but 80% said yes, and of that 80%, a further 75% or so said that it significantly cost them time and money on that project. So you have all of these reports saying that there's all these problems with construction output. Procurement isn't the entirety of it, it's a big part of it, and I think everyone has experienced, or almost everyone except for the perfect few, has experienced those problems. That's what we're trying to solve, I guess.
And just tell me, so you sell your platform to developers or people who want to buy construction services. How do you attract the players into that who are going to be part? Is it a database that you've built up that your customers can access?
So we have. So on the buying side, we have SME main contractors, SME property developers who want to do subcontract procurement. On the selling side, we have a network built up of subcontractors who, before we'll even consider them, have to get pre-qualified. Once they're pre-qualified, we then check them for multiple different steps where they have to impress us. so that we then think that they'll impress our community. Once they do that, we then welcome them into the community, and they are then able to register interest and tender and communicate with our network of buyers. And that's really important to us, is the integrity of the community, if you like. We want people who are using C-Link to be connecting with amazing contractors, amazing supply chain, so that, as I said before, C-Link projects are being built in a sophisticated, intelligent way.
So that's very interesting. So, and this platform, C-Link, it's a sort of, is it closed, or do you allow outside developers to do stuff with it?
It's closed until you enter the community. Obviously, there is a subscription and so on involved for the person buying. So the property developers are the main contractors. They make the return on investment is pretty great for those guys, but it is closed, and it's particularly closed for the subcontract supply chain, because they're the ones who we are doing a huge amount of pre-qualification and vetting on. So
part of your business is you've created this platform, you're curating it, and presumably you're doing quite a lot of what sounds to me like more typical consultancy work, which is the pre-qualification process, or is that all automated as well?
It's automated in as much as you can automate this process, Tim, and that's we have a we call it like we have a rope in front of the club, right? So before you get in, you've got to give us your ID, and by that we mean you've got to do your pre-qualification, you've got to do all the boring bits, you've got to show us your insurances, your accreditations, your company history, etc. Once you get through, and if we're impressed by that point, we'll then have a conversation with you and start to talk about references that you have, a bit of an interview, like your style, your approach. And if we then think, okay, they're a good fit, we will then consider taking them through, if that makes sense. So it really is not the yellow pages, and I really don't ever want us to be the yellow pages. I want us to be quite the opposite. I want anyone who is buying on the network in the community to know that they are accessing this rich pool of high quality contractors, which I work for a big company. We couldn't keep the network of contractors that C-Link has, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give that big business mentality, if you like, of having this supply chain kept up to date, really good supply chain, vetted supply chain, post-qualified by the network. So yeah, they're good. I really enjoyed working with them, etc. And that's something that is very hard for SMEs to do. They can't do it. So that's what we're trying to give through the managing the community and marketplace as well. All takes a lot of time, I have to say.
I'm sure it does, but because what you are creating this community, and with the idea that you reduce the transaction costs and increase the value that community can supply to your clients.
Correct.
I'm guessing in the future there's all sorts of other ways of extending that, isn't it? Because you've got not so much a captured market, you've got a connected market there of there's the same sort of stuff.
There's some really interesting opportunities that we're analysing, reviewing, and tracking in regards to data as well. In regards to like, what does it actually cost to build? Forget your spons, forget your BCIS. What is being spent on building in London in SW10 right now? And that's something that we're trying to build, analyze, and eventually be able to use that to support the industry, because that's the real live data of what are people tendering at and what people are placing orders at, and that's something that we're really focused on longer term in terms of the big picture, if that makes sense.
That sounds very interesting indeed. Very interesting indeed.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see.
Well, no, I mean, this is one of my hobby horses at the moment, as I'm saying, is the construction sector. Watch out for Jeff Bezos or whoever is. I can't remember his CEO's name. He's only been in post. He's not in post until next month, is he? But
yeah,
it's going to be a different type of business which comes into construction and really disrupts it.
Yeah, there's lots of potential, isn't there, in terms of off-site manufacturing, data. There's loads of different avenues where that it could be totally shaken up. That's the exciting bit. Going back to what we said at the very start, there is this absolute opportunity for the sector to be revolutionised, and it's a sector which is 6 or 7% of GDP worldwide. It's massive. It is one of the biggest, and it needs revolution.
No, you're right, and like I say, we work in a number of different jurisdictions, and everywhere it's if you add in all the support services, it's near 10%. And it doesn't matter whether you are developed or developing, unless you're going backwards, you have to keep spending the money on it.
Exactly.
If you're an entrepreneur, I mean, it's never going to go away, is it? It's it's not like if you're in the. I'd be worried if I was a car manufacturer at the moment, really. But people still need a house, don't they? They still need a hospital.
One of the few perks, Tim, of working in construction. We found one.
It's construction gets knocked a lot in this country, and people forget the good things about it. I mean, one of the great things about it, and I'm sure your platform will help, is that it's astoundingly agile in terms of flexing its scale to suit the economy without putting loads of people on the dole.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, obviously, because there's a big reliance on migrant labour. So, bizarrely, we looked at this in a lot of detail for our own business, but it's now easier to bring people into the country to work than it was when we were part of the EU. Yeah, the immigration rules and work permitting is massively relaxed compared with before.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Although it has put off the Poles and the Bulgarians. Once everyone sort of digested it, if they wished to, they could come back without any bother really. Well, there's a bit of paperwork, but that's gone. So it has liberalised the rules have been liberalised post Brexit now, which means that flexibility is still there. There was
interesting. I didn't realise.
There was a big concern that it would be a big problem. I don't think it will be. It's just the pickup of the people who come in will be different.
Yeah.
Anyway, I suppose on that reasonably upbeat note, I mean the whole story is really, really upbeat, and even the post-Brexit, my thoughts on post-Brexit are reasonably upbeat.
Definitely.
It's fantastic, Paul, to hear about how you have literally laid the foundations of the revolution for construction procurement in your case, but that may well lead to a significant change in the way the whole industry operates. And it won't just be in the UK, of course. If you make it here, it'll work in many places. So thank you very much for coming on. Sarah, who runs the podcast for me, will put all of Paul's contact details in the show notes, which you can access when you go on YouTube to watch it. Is there a particular website that you want to direct people towards, Paul, if they want more?
Yeah, I mean, probably best place to start in terms of finding us is www.c-link.com. So C-link. C-Link is the business. And then we actually also have our own podcast, which I think Tim may be guesting on in the near future, which we're looking forward to, which is called the Own the Build podcast. And you can find that at Apple, Spotify and Google as well. So likewise, Tim, I thought that was a very nice conversation. Very good to catch up again, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. So for everyone, that's the end of this episode, and join us in a couple of weeks for the next one. And of course, if you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, because apparently that's really good. And we'll see you on the next one. So bye.
Thanks, guys.
Come to Inventt for the highest R&D tax credit you can claim. We help construction businesses get back millions in tax credits every year. Contact us today for a free review. Thanks for joining us this week on the Construction Big Breakfast. Make sure to visit our website, www.inventt.com, where you can subscribe to the Construction Big Breakfast on all platforms so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a positive rating. Or if you'd simply share it with a friend, that would help us out too.